It's a question every parent faces, to vaccinate or not vaccinate their children. For many, the answer is a clear yes, but more and more parents are now saying no. As the idea of not getting vaccinated seems like it's becoming more prevalent, News Channel 15's Alyssa Ivanson takes a closer look at both sides of the shots. Alyssa?
There are very passionate people on both sides of the vaccination debate. Tonight, we explore the most common concerns to help you decide whether or not to get a shot in the arm.
There are a lot of viruses and bacteria out there that have the potential, if your child's infected, to really cause severe disease.
People who choose not to vaccinate are doubly educated.
Vaccinations designed to help your body develop immunity to diseases.
It's still your body's developing the antibodies. It's just doing it against an inactivated or dead virus or bacteria so that you don't actually have to have all of the potential adverse effects of the real disease.
The idea of preventing a disease first developed in the 1700s, but vaccines as we know them really didn't come into play until the early 1900s. By the late 40s, the combined DTaP was created to vaccinate against diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis, also known as whooping cough. A decade later, the polio vaccine was added. Then came the MMR for measles, mumps, and rubella. Two more added in the late 80s and 90s, and in 1995, the CDC started updating recommendations every year, adding in 4 more vaccines.
There's a whole advisory committee on immunization practices, 15 professionals from various disciplines. They will come up with recommendations.
The current CDC schedule is a total of 43 doses of 13 vaccines, not including the yearly flu shot, all by age 6.
But to say that this is the one way that you cannot get it, I don't think that's being truthful to people.
People who choose not to vaccinate say the deadly diseases were already decreasing before vaccines were common.
All the diseases went down mostly because nutrition was better, sanitation was better, all of these things were better, and they just declined on their own. That's the nature of how those things work. The touting that it eliminated the disease is not correct.
It's not sanitation that's making the difference there, it's the vaccine. All you have to do is look in other countries where they don't have access to these vaccines to see how many children are disabled and die from these preventable diseases.
Vaccine adversaries say proper nutrition, hygiene, and exercise will build immunity naturally.
Most of the time, disease comes from toxicity or deficiency. If you balance those out, then the chance of you getting something else is also very low or very mild.
They add that a healthy body can fight off the actual disease.
For the most part, nobody has a problem with it. Those that you do have a problem with it, sometimes usually are already immunocompromised.
Well, I think if you went to the hospital now and looked in the ICU and saw the young people who are healthy that are on ventilators because of influenza, that might make you reconsider that theory. Your body is limited in what it can do, even if you take care of yourself.
That's a risk many are willing to take.
Have you read the vaccine insert? Do you know what is in it?
Chemicals are added to stabilize and preserve the vaccine.
Formaldehyde, thimerosal, aluminum.
This is perhaps the most passionate of all the arguments against vaccinations.
There are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of parents and children that are screaming that something is going on.
Vaccines, like all medications, come with risks of bad reactions. The vaccine information forms list them. Doctors and parents can report incidents to the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. VAERS says more than 10 million vaccines are given to babies younger than a year old every year. Last year, around 27,000 adverse reactions were reported.
So many injuries go unreported. And so when you go onto the website, they're like, oh, injuries are really low. Well, that's because their doctors have either talked them out of it, convinced them it was a coincidence, or they're just too afraid and don't know what to do.
To me, there's no reason not to report those things because the scientific experts are going to go through all of those reports and determine again, what are they saying, that now is standing out.
The VAERS site adds the reports aren't necessarily all directly caused by the vaccine.
They keep telling it's a coincidence.
In 2011, the Institute of Medicine studied adverse events for 8 vaccines. It concluded that out of 158 cases examined, 14 were linked to the vaccine, most a severe allergic reaction. The study rejected a vaccine linked to autism or asthma, but in the vast majority, there was not enough evidence to make a connection. The committee's conclusion was, quote, few health problems are caused by or clearly associated with vaccines. But anti-vaccination groups say the study validates their concerns by linking some side effects to vaccines and concluding that most aren't clear either way.
Hundreds of thousands of people saying, my child is not the same days, weeks after this. And you're telling me it's a coincidence. That's got to change.
These 15 experts that get together, they've already weighed that out. They've looked at the scientific evidence, and in their opinion, the benefits outweigh the risks on vaccines. And I'm going to trust their judgment.
Health officials say widespread vaccinations build herd immunity. The idea is the more people immune to a disease, the less likely it is for someone who isn't immune to get it.
If 90% of the population was fully vaccinated and they got it anyway, then the herd immunity thing didn't work because the 10% that weren't covered.
The problem is if we don't have a sufficient number of people from a population perspective, we start seeing outbreaks. We start seeing more cases because you have more and more people who are not vaccinated and therefore vulnerable.
Travel to countries where vaccines aren't as prevalent can cause problems. Last week, health officials say an unvaccinated student contracted the measles while studying in Asia, then rode the public transportation system in San Francisco. The concern is babies too young for the vaccine and other people who aren't immune will contract it too. Last week, a Rose-Hulman student was diagnosed with the mumps in Indiana, and possibly 6 more are infected, prompting warnings at that school and Indiana State University. In 2010, fewer children getting vaccinations was widely blamed for a whooping cough outbreak in California. The CDC shows a slight decline in some vaccinations nationwide in the last 4 years.
There's nothing more cost-effective that we're going to do in medicine than a vaccination. And it's just a shame that it's almost become sort of popular to question that.
I get the sense that more people are asking better questions. Where there's smoke, there's fire. There's been enough that has popped up that it has, if anything, made people curious.
Vaccine-preventable diseases are still pretty rare in the United States, but health officials say it's hard to predict exactly what impact the culture of anti-vaccinations will bring.
What I would like to see is maybe not the eradication of the vaccine, but I would like to see the vaccine manufacturers and the government be more honest about what is going on.
When people see what it's like to have a deaf child from having measles, or have a child that has mental retardation from having Haemophilus meningitis and those types of things, then I think they'll get back into being, oh my gosh, give me the vaccine.
By the way, a child does not have to be vaccinated to get into school. Parents can fill out a non-medical exemption form. The districts in Allen County say less than 2% of the students do that. And Brandy, who you heard from in this story, by the way, has 2 children, and they both have been healthy, not vaccinated, and did not get any of the vaccine-preventable diseases.
Okay, thank you, Alyssa.